If we can turn our attentions now to Sherry Anderson, our
Okay,
County Treasurer. We want to thank you for coming and presenting this morning, or this afternoon.
thank you very much. You will notice that Brian Nava is not with me today. He actually had today off, so the internal auditor, Brian Nava, sends his regards, but I'll have to pick up his questions if you have any. So, I do it, okay.
I didn't even notice.
Oh, okay. Very self-sufficient. So the department-wide budget overview, you can see our budget is $968,000 and some change. We have one fund, which is the treasurer's office. General fund support is 70% of our total budget. Our investment fee is 30%. We have a very small fee in regards to, we rent out the Visa equipment, but that was less than 1%. And then 79% of our budget is personnel and 3% of our budget is rent. Those are our major budget categories. This year, we do have a project, and in fact, that's what we've been doing. We just moved over the weekend. They moved us within the PSB, on the fourth floor. We moved from our space over in the northeast side of the building to where county council was before. So we have a lovely suite of offices over there. You're all welcome to come tour. We're pretty much moved in. So that was a major remodel and accounted for some pretty substantial changes in my budget for 2017-18, which I think you had some questions about. Financial trends, our investment fee revenue is stable. We do usually budget for it to be a little lower. It is 0.01% per month of the investment portfolio. So it ends up being about 12 basis points a year. And we levy that on all of the investment portfolios that we manage, except for our trust and agency accounts. We don't levy that on those. We run about a $300 million investment portfolio, so it ends up being about $300,000 a year, but I like to be kind of, careful with how I budget that revenue. So it is a little, I do under budget that. Our expenditure trends, again, we have an increase in our new space. It's quite a bit larger, so we have rent and facilities cost increases. We have no change in our personnel from the last year. And then last year, or in 2015 and 16, we did get what's the P? What's it stand? Policy level proposal funded for internal auditor. You can see I haven't had very many of those. I don't even remember what the acronym means. But and we had none last year, and we have none this year. And that brings me to questions. So hopefully I'll get you back on, probably not on schedule, but maybe not too far behind.
So I might just remark that with the treasurer's office having moved, Sherry's office is immediately adjacent to us. We share a common wall, and so we are practicing our Morse code communication through the wall.
It's been very quiet. You haven't been there much this week, so I haven't gotten to see you. But yes, it's very nice.
All right, thank you. Tom, you have a question? Yes.
I guess my first question is, do you have plans to go through the performance clock in this process?
Actually, I was, Dan Chandler had sent me an email a few months ago and asked, and I responded back and said, I'd like to learn more, as well as I think Karen Brisbane, the Justice of the Peace, and I both wanted to meet with him and learn more about the process. So I'm willing to do it. I would just like to understand what it entails. We have a small staff, and so we really need to figure out, but I have no problem with doing it. No.
My other question or concern was your performance measurements. I mean, it's admirable you're answering yes to these things and doing these things. But most of what we've seen, and this would come out if you went through performance clocking, are quantifiable. Like
yes.
You do this 100% of the time, or so maybe just more work with maybe the budget staff. Most of them aren't no or yes, but there's a number associated or a percentage. And it kind of stood out because it was different.
An actual
Right.
goal.
I'm sorry. I am deaf in this ear, so I apologize. Sometimes it's difficult for me to localize sound. So
Yeah, so it's an actual goal, not just did you do it or did you not do it.
Right.
well, a lot of what we do is statutory, so goals don't really work, as you can't say, well, we tried to, not violate the statute. So there are a number of ours that are a yes or a no. Either we distributed tax revenue on a timely basis and met the statutory requirements for that, or we did not. Either we're in compliance with our investment policy, which is aligned with the Oregon revised statutes, or we're not. So there are some here that are yes and no. We could probably do more work on, I will tell you, these are fairly old. No one's actually ever shown much interest in
Oh,
my
I do.
my strategic plan, so. Usually,
right.
I mean,
Well,
this
if you
is
do
more
go through
interest than
those-
I've usually gotten in my budget already, so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Eric, did you have a question or no?
No, the only thing I could add here, in terms of your S and no, you could just say percent of funds distributed or not distributed in accordance with the state law, and it'd be 100%, so that's
Okay,
would equate to a quantifiable number, rather than a yes or no, but, yeah. And the internal auditor,
yes.
how many audits has he done so far?
Brian has done in the last it'll be almost 2 years, it'll be 2 years in August. He has completed and issued 3. He has completed a 4th, which is the transportation construction audit. It has not been issued. We were waiting for the department to get back to us with their response to the findings. And he has one that he is undertaking right now, which is a tourism audit. And then he is also doing a consulting engagement on the C-800 bonds. So one of the things that we wanted to do to add value was to be able to not just historically go back and look at something and say, did we achieve what we wanted to or not? We thought that this was an opportunity for us to go from the implementation of something and track it through to its completion. So since the day those bonds were issued, and actually probably even before, Brian has been following that bond issuance, making sure that the procurement process is following the guidelines that are set forth, that they're meeting all their benchmarks. And as that C-800 bond is spent, he'll be making sure that it's spent according to the timelines that have been set out, and that all the things that we want to have happen with that bond actually do, or he will report that they didn't. So I think it's a real opportunity for him, rather than to come back afterwards and say, oh gee, look what we did, we screwed up on this, or we didn't fulfill this obligation the way we expected to. We can catch it as it goes along. So he has spent a pretty substantial amount of time this year. He calendars out his years of hours. He spent 60 hours on those consulting, just the consulting for the C-800 so far, just in 2017.
Are the reports, are the departments required to respond to the findings and or to the recommendations, findings and recommendations?
Yes.
And are those responses included in the report, the final report?
Yes, and they're all available online. This is just an example. He gave this to us at our last meeting. So he said on the Justice Court audit, which was completed last year, I want to say, that was the second one he did. I want to say like maybe May, June, so it's probably been a year. He has he spent 2 hours. He's still got a couple of findings that he's following up on, so he will continue to follow up with those departments until either they have responses or have cleared all of the findings. For them, it was a matter that they were getting new software, which was going to deal with a couple of the findings, and that software has just been implemented in the month of May. So he knew that those would not be cleared until after that software. So he keeps running. He's got a certain number of hours that he spends following up with those people, making sure, and he intends then to go back always at the completion and make sure that they've done everything, or at least if they have, they are not required to do everything, but they need to tell us that they're not and why they're not.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to, knowing that we have a couple folks here that have municipal backgrounds, City of Portland specifically, when I was trying to advocate for what is now Brian's position, realized that a number of jurisdictions, our size, smaller and bigger, have a much deeper bench when it comes to independent auditing. And I do know from working with Brian, who I think is a fantastic asset to the county, he's a busy guy. And I know I was talking to the administrator here about a month ago about, what he would like to see in the budget. And I know you brought up another auditor, but I know it's not in the budget though, because it's not, there's no PLPs or the resources to do that. But I just kind of wonder, Sherry, if you have any kind of a inclination as to if if we had the resources in the optimal world, what the depth of that bench would look like as far as, would it be one person more additional or two or three? What do you think is an adequate size?
Well, I will tell you, Brian does the work. He's like a superhuman. He does the work of multiple people. I'm continually astounded by him. He came from the Oregon Secretary of State's office, and he just does a fabulous job, endless bounds of energy. I think that Brian could definitely use another auditor. He's doing all of his own field work, all of his own report writing. I do, we design the audit together, we figure out the scope and do all of that together, but he is the one who's implementing all of that. I review the reports and at a higher level, but he definitely could use a lower level auditor to do some of that field work for him, running some of those analytics. I think that would be a natural fit. We had talked about maybe in that person trying to get a skill set that was strong in IT, because a lot of what we do is evaluating the computer programs. A lot of our, even a lot of our hotline complaints, a lot of our internal audit work has to do with kind of getting reporting out of different kinds of software systems. And it's, there, usually in most internal audit departments, there is an IT person. Now, I know Brian met with, we call them the Daves, Dave from IT or IS or TS or whatever they are, you know who I'm talking about. And they're actually looking for someone that we could probably partner with from an IT perspective, which would then free up a position in our office to do more just straight internal auditing. So I think if we could get maybe a person in TS that we jointly shared that did some of the compliance issues, a lot of, even with, you just look at PCI compliance and the depth of the things that we need to do on that, having someone with a skill set that can do those evaluations would be very, very helpful and would help us mitigate risk in the county. All of the HIPAA things, all of those, we could just touch the iceberg on some of those. It would be nice to have someone that has stronger background in that. So if we could partner with TS to get more of an IT internal auditor, they're called a CISA, C-I-S-A. And then also, and then we could get a straight internal auditor at the junior, just a staff level auditor. I think it would be, we would be set. I don't think we need much more than that at this time.
Appreciate that. And I'll just close with this. And I think that actually going through the budgets so far, I can see that, there's, some departments have some substantial reserves or contingencies or carryovers that would fund that position quite easily. And I think it'd be worthwhile to take some of those dollars and find a way to do that. Maybe that's something we talk about next week, but just wanted to get an idea. Thank you.
I think people have found a lot of value in that have worked with Brian. So.
Yeah, thanks. Having some experience with that, being a SOCA member myself, knowing what a CISA is, as well as someone with a CISSP for security would be perhaps useful. If you can find someone with both of those to partner with would be, occurred to me when the technology group met, would be useful, I think, for the county, definitely. Eric, do you have?
I just wanted to ask you, do you have a fraud hotline?
Yes,
Okay.
we've had one since 2005. It's through Ethics Point. So it's a third-party hotline. The infrastructure is third-party, but we manage it out of the treasurer's office. I managed it before, and now Brian manages it. And I will just tell you, in the last 2 years, we've had 35 incidents come through the hotline. So it's pretty substantial use. He spent in this year, since January, 139 hours on hotline incidents. We get quite a few. We get them through other sources other than just the hotline. We've had them come up through internal audits. We've had people walk into my office and tell me that they know their friend is stealing from the county. And so we've had, they come in all sorts of different forms, but it's I would say we're very active with our fraud and waste.
That's good, because most frauds, substantial frauds, are generally disclosed through a fraud hotline. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I want to
Hey.
thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming and sharing with the treasurer's office.